Hi! I am so glad you're here. We are continuing our D&D inspired makes this month, and we're gonna become Ellga Von Brath from the Grotef campaign from Tales from the Stinky Dragon. Now, Ellga is a half-elf, half-human vampire barbarian. I don't think this is spoiling anything, because I'm pretty sure this bit presents itself immediately. Ellga is a vampire, and we all know this, but she tries to hide it from her fellow party members, who all kind of have figured it out, but nobody's saying it out loud because they know she's trying to hide it, so nobody says it. I find her character delightful, so I would like to make a cosplay of Ellga Von Brath. Now, Ellga has a red pleated skirt, a sort of pinkish, pinkish, I think it's pinkish, blouse, and I think I actually have the perfect pattern for that. I used it in the Grim Reaper video back in October. She has a gold locket, a red hooded cape, and I believe she wields a great axe. So we're gonna try to make all of those things. I was going to wear my red skirt that I already have, but knowing that it is specifically a pleated skirt, between the pleats and the very thick waistband, I think that's enough detail to warrant making a new skirt. And I think both the blouse and the skirt, at least, will be very wearable pieces after this cosplay, which you know I love. And making a hooded cloak, you don't have to ask me twice. Yes, please. Any day, any reason. I want a hooded cloak. I don't know if I'm gonna make the locket yet, because I do have a locket that I like to wear that has pictures of my family in it, so I might just wear my own locket with it. Because she's a vampire, she also has vampire teeth. Now, I have 3 sets of vampire teeth, but I've never been able to make them stay in my mouth. Video tutorials on how to apply them. I have followed the instructions, have never gotten it to stay in my mouth. So hopefully I'll be able to solve that issue.
Hi, hopping in to say that I don't think Tales from the Stinky Dragon is inappropriate for kids. I can't recall there being anything overtly adult or inappropriate for children, though it has been a minute since I've listened, but I really can't recall there being any other mature themes other than some violence, maybe, because it is a D&D campaign, so there's fighting, there are monsters, but other than that, I can't recall there being anything very inappropriate. I would maybe recommend, if you're an adult with a kiddo in your life who likes D&D or is interested in D&D, maybe give it a listen first and then decide if it's something that you feel okay with your kiddo listening to, or maybe listening with them, so that if there are any questions, you can answer them. And this one's a little bit more tricky to say whether it's safe for kids to listen to or not. So yeah, I can't really remember if there's anything inappropriate, but
back to the clothing. Luckily, all of our materials are thrifted. I've had this in my stash. I was given this piece of fabric. I don't know if there will be enough for the skirt, but I do have a different red piece that I can use if I don't. Whoa! This fabric's very slippery. It's falling off my also slippery dress. I thrifted this red lace to potentially add some detail or textural difference to the costume. I'm not sure. I grabbed it just in case. This was another great thrift store find. It's a nice smooth red. I don't know how much is here. Thinking about using this one for the hooded cloak. And for the blouse, I thought I didn't have a pale pink sheet, so I thrifted this one. It's a bit more stiff. But then I forgot, I already did have a pale pink sheet in my stash that I got for my Howl's Moving Castle vest. And this one's less structured. I think I'm going to use this option. It's hard to tell on camera, but I think it has a slightly darker hue to it, and I think that just looks more like her character art. So we have our materials, we have our inspiration. Let's go see what we can do today, even if it's just cutting out the patterns. Just like the other D&D videos, I'm trying to dress like the characters from the campaign, and our first outfit is inspired by Barney Farney. The first challenge while cutting out the patterns was seeing if I had enough of this red fabric for the skirt, and luckily, even with a few cuts to even out the edges, it seemed like it'd be long enough and wide enough. The only thing it was missing was fabric for the waistband, but I happened to have this strip of a similar fabric in my stash, and it was the perfect length for the waistband. On top of that, I cut out some lace for the waistband as well, just to add a different texture. I figured while I had the skirt in mind, I'd just figure out the pleats so that it's all ready to be sewn later. To make the pleats as uniform as possible, I used a fork to twirl the fabric around. It took a few attempts to make sure I was turning it the right way, but eventually the skirt had all the pleats it could have, because the fabric was just too short to do them all the way around, and there are none in the back. I'm not that bothered. Next up, I cut out the blouse, and this is a great example of why I love using bed sheets. I was able to cut out the pieces along the hemmed edges of the sheets, so the bottom hem of the blouse is already done, and the seam in the back is also hemmed, which is less work for me later when I'm putting it all together. Now, the sleeves to this blouse technically have 3 or 4 layers of flounce that continue past this shorter sleeve piece, so to make it long-sleeved, I measured my arm's length, and following the angle of the pattern, continued the line to be the same length of my arm. Last but certainly not least, I cut out the red hood. I first measured how long I wanted the capelet to be, and marked that length from the neck opening in the corner all the way around. It was only after I started cutting the fabric that I realized I had folded the fabric incorrectly. Cutting it out like this would have resulted in a seam in the back, which I didn't want. So I refolded it, did that over again, and then completely forgot how to cut out a circle. It took me an embarrassingly long time to remember something I do all the time, but I think I had been so thrown off by that first attempt that I started questioning absolutely everything after that. But we got there eventually. Then I had an idea to make an embroidered collar for the blouse, so I cut out the piece, clipped on some interfacing, and found the perfect colors. Day 2's outfit was inspired by Chip Haney, don't you know, a tiefling assassin, so I made some little horn clips for my hair and wore both of my sword earrings to symbolize his arm blades. And while loading the bobbin for all the red fabric, I realized that there was a perfect little roundup of our D&D mix this month in the display box. I figured the capelet could be finished up pretty quickly, so I started on that first. To protect the edges, I zigzag stitched along every seam and then sewed 2 tubes to turn right side out to be the ties. The hood was a little bit longer than the neck of the capelet, so I gathered it to match, then clipped and sewed it all together. This fabric was so slippery and tricky to work with that I didn't want to fight the machine to attach the ties, so I sewed them on by hand. I love a little cape/cloak moment, so I could barely contain my excitement trying this on. Next, I started on the skirt, sewing down the pleats before doing anything else. And forgot if I pressed the record button or not. To prevent the pleats from falling out, I both clipped and pinned them into place, so sewing those down first was super important. Required a few adjustments as I pulled the pins out, but otherwise it went pretty well. I zigzag stitched over the raw edge at the bottom to help keep the hem nice and clean, then clipped and sewed the waistband to the skirt. Then I attached a zipper. Yes, a zipper. I usually try to avoid them, but sometimes they're just the best option. And it went well overall. The end result was pretty clean, but it definitely needed some finishing touches, so I hand-stitched the fabric down around the top so that it didn't get caught on the zipper. I was so focused on installing the zipper correctly that I didn't realize there was a hole in the fabric. No big deal though, because other than that little flaw, the skirt was done. Before I called it a night, I took the blouse pieces and ran the raw edges through the serger to prepare everything for the next day, when I dressed like Mathilde Confucius, an Era Cochran ghost monk who also runs a bakery. Before putting the blouse together, I decided to finish the embroidery on the collar, so I drew some bats onto a piece of stick and stitch and grabbed that pink floss that just matches the fabric almost perfectly. To tie it in more with the skirt and the cape, I did add a few red details, including 2 little bite marks as a nod to Ellga being a vampire. Ellga's collar has a little ruffle on it, so I added one in between the collar and the blouse pieces, as well as on the sleeves, which did need some adjustments. The wrist was too loose, so I decided to add some elastic by zigzag stitching the elastic to the underside of the cuff. And not only did it fix the fit, but it really accentuated the ruffle and made it look more dramatic. After sewing the sides of the blouse together and attaching a hook and eye closure to the top of the collar, it was time for a quick try-on to make sure everything fit well, and it did indeed. The blouse, capelet, and skirt were all done, but we're not done yet, because Ellga needs her axe. At this point, I was out of characters to dress up as, so I wore my Frankenstein dress because the Groteth campaign is actually themed to several different classic monsters, so I figured it fit the theme. To get an idea of the shape of the blades on the axe, I looked at the official art of Ellga as well as her puppet form, which does have a longer handle on the axe, but we're using a wrapping paper tube, so that's just how long we're going to make it. I taped some paper together to draw out a pattern, though it needed to be a bit wider, so I chopped the entire pattern in half and patched it together to make it bigger. I had pulled up the art in some of their short-form puppet videos to use as a reference, and while watching the short where Ellga turns into a bat, I decided that making a bat was absolutely necessary. So while I was in pattern drafting mode, I started sketching pieces to make a little plush bat version of Ellga, but I didn't get very far. The power went out. It's been very, very windy, and it was only a matter of time before it happened. But this isn't the first time this has happened while I've been working, so I was prepared and just grabbed my lantern and kept going. I cut out our little bat pattern and started hand-stitching the pieces together. I did take a small break to go run a few errands and grab dinner, and by the time I came back and kept working, the power came back too, which was great, but I forgot my work light was on when it went out, so when it came back on, yeah. Because I had already done so much hand stitching on the little bat, I just decided to continue putting it together by hand. stuffed the tiny body with soft scraps from making the clothes, but I did stitch the details onto the wings using the machine to try and keep it as consistent as possible. I ladder stitched the head and wings onto the body, put some black beads on for eyes, and embroidered on a little pink nose. To give her some tiny claws, I attached these beaded wire pieces from an old pair of earrings I never finished making, and I thought the looped ends were perfect to feed a little wire through to make her fly. With Bat Ellga finished and the power returned, I went back to work on the axe. I cut out our pattern and traced it onto the biggest pieces of cardboard I had on hand. They weren't consistently shaped, however, and there were more bends in the cardboard than I would have liked, so I tried to make it work by double-siding the blades and reinforcing them in the middle by gluing little pieces of cardboard between them. I tried to make the edge of the blade look sharpened by flattening out the edge, and it was at this point that I remembered. I forgot to grab silver paint earlier that afternoon, so I improvised and grabbed my foil. It's shiny and silver, so I tried my best to make it work. I covered one side of the axe and was feeling pretty good about the progress, and then it broke. The wooden dowel I had placed in the tube and the axe to help hold it up had snapped, breaking straight through the top of the tube. There was just too much cardboard and the blade was way too heavy for the handle. I decided to call it a night. The next day I took the axe apart completely. I had wanted to make the blade more three-dimensional in shape by making it double-sided, but it was simply too heavy. So I settled for one layer of cardboard and made sure to add more structure to the middle and to the joint between the blade and the handle this time. This was actually a good mistake because it gave me time to get some silver paint, which I slathered all over the blade of the axe. It took 4 to 5 layers of silver paint to really cover it well, but on the other hand, painting the handle brown only took 2 layers. Once the base was dry, it was time for details. I dirtied the edges of the blade to age it a little bit, add some wear and tear here and there, and added some bits of metal near the points of the blade because the folds of the cardboard needed some structural reinforcement. So to make them look better, I added some little studs, which I also painted silver. To finish the end of the handle, I glued on an old thread cone, covered that in paper, and painted it brown as well. As far as decorating the handle, I made this rope a few years back, and it's just been sitting in my stash, so I thought it might look nice wrapped around the top and bottom. Now, the corrugated cardboard pattern on the blade was kind of distracting to me, so I decided to busy it up even more by making a hammered metal look by pressing my scissors and the lid of a candle onto it repeatedly. And that was the last detail. So it's time for the reveal. I love holding this giant axe. I am so happy with how this turned out. Everything was pretty straightforward. I think the cape looks nice. I think it could use some sort of detail down the front. This material is kind of tricky to work with, so I wouldn't necessarily want to do embroidery, but maybe some iron-on details down the front would be cool. I really like the blouse. The bad details are admittedly hard to see, but I think that's okay. I think I like that because I didn't want them to stand out too much. I think I need to adjust where I made the little puncture holes. The little dots I have to symbolize a vampire bite are a bit further back than I would like them to be. But otherwise, I just kind of wanted there to be a subtle detail. And you know what? I think it's pretty wearable. I also really like the skirt. I haven't done a lot of pleated skirts like this, just because I do like a twirly circle skirt, but I do kind of like the cupcakey shape that you get with pleating like this, especially with a little petticoat underneath. I would say it's wearable, but this fabric was given to me from a theater, and it has a lot of stains on it. I don't know what they are. My best guess is, knowing some of the productions that theater had done, it's perhaps some old fake blood that had been used at one point or another. So it does have quite a few stains all over it, and there's a hole in the back by the zipper. So I don't know if I'll be wearing it out in the wild, but I'll definitely wear it just around the house. So the outfit overall, I really like. Now the axe, you know, it's been a while since I've listened to the campaign, so I don't know what kind of details are present on Ellga's axe, if any are stated. Oh no! So I just made a very generic axe. I tried to anyway. I didn't think it was gonna work because the first one I made broke. And And I will say that the structural integrity of this one isn't the best. This is just a wrapping paper tube, and I didn't reinforce it with anything because I couldn't figure out what to use to reinforce it. So there is a bend over here that threatens to collapse every time I pick it up. I didn't do any aging on the back because sometimes you can see the words from the box I used through 4 to 5 layers of silver paint. So we're just gonna look at this side. I also like the hammered metal look I tried to do, and I think it looks pretty good. Now I have to find somewhere to display it. Maybe crisscrossed with my sword. Now, I was working with whatever I had on hand, but I think someday I do want to try making weaponry out of EVA foam, because I think with foam I would definitely be able to get the more three-dimensional shape that I was trying to get initially, but just couldn't manage. I've learned something about myself, and that's that I really like making weaponry. I love a prop. Speaking of props, my little pet. It's very cute. I love making little guys. This was just a fun little addition to this project. I did not plan on making this at first, but when I watched the short where Ellga turns into a bat, I had to recreate it in my own way. And it's almost like another puppet. I love making puppets. I'm gonna have to find someplace to display little Ellga too.
I forgot to talk about how I did the teeth. I couldn't get the fangs to stick to my teeth, so I hot glued a piece of wire to the fang, and I then just kind of hold between my upper lip and my gum. It's not the most reliable solution, but it worked.
I don't think I have any notes. I mean, my sleeves are a little messy, but everything turned out really well, even the axe. I like everything I made. And if you do too, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what we're doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. We have one more D&D-ish video left this month. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell. YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!